30 long seconds. That's about the time you have sitting at the light to make a decision. Do you give or do you awkwardly look away? It's a tough question with very little information. Entire stories summed up on a broken piece of cardboard. So before you give money to the next panhandler you see, watch as we go behind the cardboard story. Their stories are humbling. Their faces,
there ain't no way to describe how hard it is out here.
Often scarred with despair. Homeless and hungry, jobless and stranded, they are begging for your help.
Just trying to change for anything at all, please.
What's wrong?
I'm trying to get my children to safe places to sleep in a place where I won't get beaten up anymore.
But what would you do if the food you generously gave was tossed to the side? What would you think if the challenge to walk was not always such a challenge? And what would you say if at the end of the day a car is waiting to jump in and drive off? Well, if you're anything like Tom Jager,
I think he's a bad guy. If he's smart enough to do that, he's smart enough to go get a job.
it does not sit well. Jager says he's witnessed the business of begging firsthand. A car dropping off a crew of panhandlers in the morning and then picking them up at the end of their shift.
And I said, "So are you really even homeless?" And she goes, "No, we have a house." I said, "So you're basically just running a business where you're asking people for money?" And she goes, "Yeah, basically."
But they can't all be scamming us, can they? What kind of person would say they have cancer if it were not true? Who would have the heart to pull out a couple of pictures of their kids?
Those are my children.
If the money was not going to be used for them? And how could you spend hour after hour, day after day, enduring the humiliation that comes?
You know, people drive by you, throw stuff at you, call you names, you know.
From begging for money.
First week I cried. I mean, I didn't want to go and do this, but it was our last resort and everything. And I mean, it's embarrassing.
That right there is Jamie, and she and her husband Robert have been on the street since he got hit in a head-on collision. And if you're not buying the story on his sign, proof of the accident,
because at the beginning they were so deep that my shin bones were hanging out,
is not for the faint of heart. In the end, medical bills forcing them out of home and their two young daughters.
You had to go there.
Out of their day-to-day lives.
I just miss them. I just miss them a lot.
One single moment that has drastically changed their finances, their health, and their future. A similar moment? Doing the same to 53-year-old Gary. More than a year ago, he could actually stand on his own until a hit-and-run driver
right here, you can see it's broke.
Did some serious damage to his leg.
I wish I wasn't in this situation, but a lot of people don't believe I got a broken leg.
The thing is, Gary's got the police report to prove it. He's got the x-rays to prove it. He's even got the medical bills to prove it. But there's still one question. So can you walk?
I can't.
Not at all.
No.
That will leave you wondering if you're witnessing a miracle, a scam, or maybe something else. I've seen you walk on this before.
You have? Where have you seen me walk at?
People get stories and they find the stories that are going to be the most compelling.
That's Jason Mathis. He's not a panhandler, but as executive director of the Downtown Alliance, believes the once inner-city issue is drastically spread across the entire Wasatch Front. And giving in to these sad, sad stories,
You shouldn't confuse homelessness with panhandling.
creates a false sense of charity.
I think it kind of lets people off the hook a little bit. So if somebody's walking by, they give $3 or $4 to a panhandler and they think, okay, I'm a good person, I've done my duty, I don't have to worry about this again. Well, really what you may have done is enabled somebody with a substance abuse problem.
And while that may be the case for many,
I'm not a drug addict. I
Don't use drugs, son.
panhandlers like Daniel and his girl Ashley are very convincing as to how they use their money. They buy food and rent a room. That's it.
Some days I would just get the money just to have somewhere to sleep, and I wouldn't even eat.
So we watched Daniel for a couple of weeks, and at first his story raised some questions. Begging for money, but also texting on a smartphone, asking for food, but throwing it away. And when we followed this homeless man to a Salt Lake City house, it appeared to be a complete scam. That is until we watched him in uniform, grinding it out, washing and cleaning our car at his new job. Just like that, Daniel was off the corner, staying with family and no longer begging for cash, but instead, he was working for it.
Like seeing me right now, you guys are probably like, damn, he was scamming, or you know, but I'm an honest person, and I think that it's always good to be honest.
All right, so at this point, what's your initial impression of the panhandlers that we followed so far? Would you give or would you look away? Keep that thought, because in 90 seconds, you will find out if this group of people begging for your money are the people that they say they are. The rest of this story may surprise you. We'll be back. Welcome back. 3 panhandlers, 3 stories tugging at the emotions of all who drive by. Now, first impressions seem to play a major role in whether or not people give, but what we found out may leave you with a lasting impression.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great day.
A lot of people say that they make $100 to $200 a day.
Yay!
We don't come close to that.
It's been about 9 months now since Jamie and Robert lost just about everything good in their lives: his health, their home, and their 2 young girls. On cardboard, their story checks out, but would you still hand them cash if you knew their history? Between the two, they've got 15 years of felonies and arrests, including theft, burglary, forgery, DUI, and the use or possession of drugs. Ask them about their past. Have you ever been involved in drugs?
Long time ago, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in high school and my early college years, yeah.
And they appear to be pretty honest, but it seems bad habits are often tough to shake. Within weeks of our interview, both were arrested and charged with drug crimes.
It's been a struggle since we've been out here trying not to go back down that road, because it's so easy to try to escape and just not worry about all the crap.
A few miles south, and Gary's gearing up for another day in the chair. We've already seen him walk.
What I'm saying is I can't walk, and if I try to walk, I'm going to end up falling, going out in the street again.
But Gary's problems date back nearly 2 decades before the accident. More than 70 times he has been arrested or cited, including convictions of theft, criminal trespassing, and 3 counts of sexual battery. Mentally, Gary's told the courts that he is bipolar and schizophrenic. In at least 2 cases, the judge has ordered a psychological examination.
That's where I'm at. I'm just out here trying to make money, you know.
Speaking of making money, at last check, former panhandler Daniel was making an honest living at the car wash. He was working, cleaning, scrubbing, vacuuming, and according to police,
officers say this man, 32-year-old Daniel Max Lopez,
he was also robbing.
Was cuffed soon afterward.
In jail, on the news, court records claiming Daniel walked up to a woman in a parking lot with a threat. He's now charged with a first-degree felony. So ask yourself one more time, what will you do? What will you think? What will you say the next time you stop at the light? The stories and faces will likely be very different, but in many ways,
I wouldn't go out there and take people's money just to do it.
They are exactly the same.
I think that's totally wrong. I'm an honest person, and I think that it's always good to be honest.
All right, so as your impression of these panhandlers changed in the last 2 minutes, would you still give them money? If not, where do you give to help the thousands of Utahns who truly are in need, to provide them with the basics to survive and get them back on their feet? All day tomorrow, join KSL Gives Back. In every newscast, we will highlight a different organization, charity, or resource where you can give and be certain that the money will be used to help those who are in need. Well, the story I'm about to share with you is about a basketball player at the U. It's not a sports story, though, but rather a story about a father who is homeless and the power of influence on his son. Here's tonight's IN report.
What's up? What's up?
What's up, Gary?
Another day, brother.
There aren't a whole lot of places in this world where you will hear so
He's almost a shoo-in for college right now.
many stories.
I understand.
Everyone seems to have one, some short, some long, and some
I would have never thought I'd be rooting for Utah. But here I am, and that's my squad. When Utah comes on, that's my team.
simply hard to believe. But the guy sitting in this chair is the reason a barber shop in Los Angeles has even heard of the Utah Utes.
It was the game of the day, shot of the night.
His name is Gary Dubois, and his story is directly connected to Salt Lake City.
Runs it right, takes a 3.
That's his boy, wearing jersey number 5.
Jared Dubois.
If you have never heard of Jared Dubois, you will likely remember Dubois launch this.
I heard him say, Mr. Clutch, Mr. Clutch. So I started to believe that I was a player who was supposed to be clutch, and it was just supposed to happen.
That is Jared Dubois on the spotlight, and this is Mr. Clutch once the lights have dimmed, pushing a cart in a Salt Lake grocery store full of bread and water, peanut butter and jelly.
Is this the biggest one? Yeah.
and putting them together slice
I don't know about the peanut butter.
by slice.
Smash the bread together.
This is how Sunday mornings begin for the big man on campus. And the way it ends
Would you like some water?
Peanut butter and jelly?
You're welcome. Have a good day. Would you like some water? Would you like a sandwich too?
is about as clutch as he gets.
How you doing, youngster?
Oh, I need food for my baby.
You have a baby?
Yes.
How's that possible? You can't duplicate the feeling that someone gives you when you give them the meal that might be their only meal of today, 2 days.
From Pioneer Park to Salt Lake's Skid Row, the homeless are fed, the lonely are heard, and their stories.
Everyone has a story. They want someone to listen to. Everyone wants their feelings or story to be heard.
Leave him grateful for what he's got.
A lot of what I do on a daily basis comes from having my father around. I mean, where I grew up, not many of my friends even had a father.
1, 2, 3. This group is going to run their lap first. We're going to go around the first 2 trees.
His father, Gary, is a middle school phys ed teacher on the outskirts of LA, and he teaches these kids
I can see that now, but you got to give me this on a daily.
the very same life lessons
Slide? What's the purpose of a slide?
he has taught his own.
Are you getting better? Are you getting better?
Yeah, but not.
That's all that counts. No, it doesn't matter what they think.
He never really told me how to do certain things or how to be, but I definitely felt that he showed me.
2, 1.
And that statement right there is why this
Give me 5.
will likely not come as a surprise. Once a month,
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Gary walks the streets of inner city LA.
You do something for someone else, eventually it's going to come around and you're going to receive your blessing.
He will feed the homeless. He will clothe the needy.
11. I got 11 halves. Okay.
And offer them
What you
something
listening to? They got Aldi Shore on it. He's good, man.
they rarely get to share. And that is a chance
And he starts moving me back. I'm like,
to tell their story.
that's usually a day-to-day type of a story. You know, what's going on today, you know, how's the weather.
But like many stories, there is often a twist. And Gary's story
Unfortunately, they said I would have to go.
has an extremely ironic one.
So at that time, I was homeless and I didn't have an option.
That was 5 years ago, and to this day, Gary is still living out of his car. It's where he eats, it's where he sleeps.
This reclines all the way back.
And despite a few minor interruptions from above,
And my window's usually up. I don't really hear them.
this simple way of life has become his new normal. No longer because he has to,
I had a couple of family members that were having some financial issues.
but simply because, in his mind, it is the right thing to do.
I was sending her a check a month.
Giving money to family and friends so they don't have to live out of their cars.
$2,000 a month that I'm not putting on an apartment. That's a lot of money that can go a lot of different ways, and it can help a lot of other people.
For Gary Dubois, that is the part of his story he often leaves out. Most friends don't know, his students don't know, the people he serves do not know. But the one person
I sometimes forget that he's living in the car.
who has silently watched every chapter play out
My idol, best friend, whatever you want to call it, that was him.
may have been the one person whose story he influenced the most.
How about that? Gary said that he had no idea that his son was feeding the homeless here in Utah until he read an article about Jared in the Deseret News. After 5 years of living in a car, though, Gary has saved up enough money to where he is hoping to get into a home by the end of the year.
Isn't that wonderful?
Great story.
You found a great, inspiring story on 2 fronts.
It is.
Thanks.
So good for him, and best of luck to both he and his son, and we'll continue and follow them, see where they go.